Deputy Enda Kenny.
I rise today to speak for those who have no voice for themselves. Last week I raised with the Taoiseach the consequence of government action at not controlling costs, and at a situation where thousands of people and members of families are forced today to march on this House in respect of the cutting of respite care for the disabled, for the mentally challenged and for their families. Last week the Taoiseach defended his decision. I've considered your reply and I fundamentally reject it. Last year the Voluntary Federation of bodies who provide healthcare services in the voluntary sector sat down with the Health Service Executive, and they faced up to their responsibility in this time of national crisis, and they agreed on a percentage range of cuts amounting to 15 million, plus all the reductions in public pay and everything else. And they agreed that, and they said to their constituent members around the country, this is a time of national crisis and we are prepared to face up to our responsibility and take our fair share. And because the HSE was unable to control its costs in other areas where there were overruns, they came back and took another 11 million from the voluntary sector. This is what's causing the problem, Taoiseach. This is what's causing thousands of families to march today for their loved ones who have no voice, who cannot speak for themselves. Now, you defended this position last week. The report on the special group on public service numbers and expenditure programmes outlines in so many ways where your government could have taken a different choice, taken a different decision that would have dealt with this situation, where these respite services, where respite and the services provided could continue to be provided. For instance, in the rationalisation of state agencies, this report points out where you could have saved 154 million. In the area of health and children and that vote alone, there's a saving of 1.2 billion to be made from a menu of options. But yet you have allowed a situation, Taoiseach, where an extra 11 million has been savaged down on top of these organisations by the Health Service Executive, with the consequence that people who are now having to look after adult people with a mental age of 3 or 4 years of age are now under serious stress, serious pressure. And this House goes off today for tomorrow for its summer recess, leaving this absolute mess behind. Can I ask you, Taoiseach, are you prepared today, in the interest of the thousands and thousands of families who are involved in this on a 24-hour basis, are you prepared to take executive action as Taoiseach and put a stop to this madness and allow these voluntary organisations who are prepared to take their share of responsibility to be able to continue to provide services in Caherdavan and in Swinford and in Cabra and in other places around the country where closures are now having to take place? Will you today put a stop to this madness?
There is no such decision, Deputy Kenny. There is no such decision. Secondly, Deputy Kenny,
Deputy McCormick, please.
Deputy Kenny. I want to make it very clear. It is not acceptable to me or to this government that respite services will be cut. It will not happen as far as I'm concerned. Ministers Harney and Maloney are meeting the Brothers of Charity today. I have indicated that there are other savings to be found in terms of management and layers of management of HR systems and purchasing and procurement savings. There is no such decision. It is not a time to scare people who are vulnerable. There are 25,000 people in receipt of services.
Taoiseach, without interruption, please.
Taoiseach, without interruption, please.
By 400%. I am proud of what I've done in this area. I was a sponsor of it myself when I was Minister for Health and Minister for Finance. And I want to make it very clear to you, Deputy Kenny, you were a member of a government that would even provide €1 million for emergency services for people. That's your record. And I want to assure you that the discussions that are taking place will ensure that those people will not be affected. And I won't take any nonsense from you in relation to it.
Kenny, please. Could we have Deputy Kenny without interruption? Deputy McCormick, could you allow your party leader to speak?
I asked you a question in here as Taoiseach. Was about a woman in hospital. You said it was too facile to raise such a case. I reject your charge here today, and shame on you and your government for allowing this to happen, what's happening now. You say that no such decision has been made. Why are thousands of people marching to this House today, Taoiseach? I'll tell you why. Because here is their cry for help. Who speaks for these? You certainly don't these days. You certainly don't. Because under your government's you've chosen to increase the entertainment budget in government departments up by 66% this year, or €1.2 million. €1.2 million for entertainment and clinking of glasses. €289,000 in your own department. The budget, the travel budget of government departments is up by €2.4 million this year. Would that not provide these services and allow these places to remain open? You've chosen not to make any redundancies in the HSE corporate body, despite the fact that the Chief Executive told my own party that there were at least 2,500 in the system who did not know what their jobs were, who didn't know where they fitted into that system, and yet who had jobs for life. You've chosen not to implement any of the rationalisation options mentioned by McCarthy, which would save €150 million. You've chosen not to do that because you've allowed another soft touch where the HSE have savaged the budget down on top of these voluntary organisations. Now, I reject what you were saying in here, Taoiseach. I reject it. It's fine for you to talk about governments 20 years ago, 15 years ago, or 13 years ago, 1994, 1997. And when that government handed over the economy to you, it was in surplus for the first time in 27 years. And it now looks like as if we're going to have to sort it out again. But I'll say this to you, Minister. I'll say this to you, Taoiseach Cowen. You've come in here time after time and you've said, I will always accept responsibility for my actions. I stand over all my decisions. Yes, Taoiseach, but you don't accept the consequences of them. You don't understand or seem to understand what's happening in the thousands of households around this country. You may well smile about it. You may well smile about it. And if you see it's not happening, go and ask the sisters, the daughters of charity and the brothers of charity and those who are providing voluntary services. My point is this, Taoiseach. These organisations faced up to their responsibility. They agreed to take cuts across the board, including pay cuts, to do the same work for less. They agreed that. But because you have not been able to either govern or to manage, the HSE, with overruns in other sections, has imposed these extra cutbacks on the voluntary sector that provides the best service and value for money of any department under the HSE, any of them. These are now having these extra cuts imposed on them. I say to you, your response last week and this week is indicative. You want the chair to protect you. Is indicative of a Taoiseach and a government who has lost compassion, who doesn't understand the difficulties and the stress and the pressure that these people are now facing. And you will go down in history as the Taoiseach who presided over not listening to the call of these people who said, government, help us. Government, help us. You're going down the wrong road. There were other options you could have chosen. And you'll go away for the summer and leave this 24-hour-a-day situation for thousands of families in your wake. Shame on you and your government.